Hi, I'm Morey Schapira. I'm the National Sales Manager here at Network General. We're here in the video recording studio at Network General, headquartered in our intercontinental headquarters in Mountain View, California. Today's date is December 1st, 1988. We've just completed another record month, and I'd like to thank all of you for your contributions towards that record month. One of the items that had been discussed by the Rep Council and at the recent sales meeting was the need for more training and the utilization of video as a training technique. We've recently sent out some videotapes and computer disks with traces on them so that you could become better LAN gurus at figuring out problems on LANs. However, there's more to selling the sniffer than merely being a LAN guru. What we are going to be doing today is have two separate tapings covering the two different aspects of selling the sniffer. The first segment will cover a lot of the selling techniques that I have seen used around the country successfully, so that those of you who I haven't had a chance to be with personally can have the benefit of some of these techniques. The second part will be more mechanical in nature. It will go through the elements of what we consider is a good demonstration of the sniffer. We are here right now next to one of our 302 laptops, as you can see, which is hooked into a color monitor. And we're using the color monitor to demonstrate, of course, the version 2.0 software, which has the color-coded protocols. But most of the discussion here during the next 10 or 15 minutes will not be focusing just on the screen here, but rather on the other materials that I have on the table next to me, and how we can work together to effectively utilize these different selling materials. If we sit down and analyze what it is that we are selling to our end customers, it's not just some bytes and some bits, or a box with so many kilobytes of storage, or so many megabytes of RAM, etc., etc. But rather what we're doing is selling confidence. We are selling him an instrument which we are confident that when he uses it properly, he will be confident in managing his or her network. How do we go about selling this confidence in the sniffer, in you as a salesman, and Network General as a corporation, so that the customer will wind up purchasing a sniffer? One of the things we have to do is educate our customers. LAN technology is relatively new. Some customers are much more sophisticated than others in understanding it. One of the things that we must stress to our customers is that if you are going to be running a serious LAN, running multiple protocols, running different hardware, different software from different vendors, if you're going to be doing this, a LAN analyzer is a necessity. I use a very simple analogy that I think virtually everybody can understand. If you had a car, would you drive a car without a dashboard? Could you drive a car without a dashboard? Not knowing what your speed is, your oil pressure, your water temperature, your RPMs, etc., etc. Well, if you didn't have a dashboard, the car would run, you would turn in the key, and it would go, but you would have no indication of when you were low on oil or losing water, etc. And the same thing can be said utilizing the sniffer. That the LAN could be running today, but without a window into the LAN, you don't know what problems might be going on and what the implications of those problems are. To some degree, I think, before going in to talk to the LAN manager, you must put yourself in his shoes and ask yourself, what is he concerned about? Because when demonstrating the sniffer, you're not just selling him a box, but rather you're offering him a chance to be a hero to his management. What are some of the things that he is concerned about? For example, I have a recent issue of Business Week in front of me. Many of you have seen the cover. is your computer secure? And for those of you who've been following what's been going on recently with computer viruses, you know that the issue of network security, network infiltration, network sabotage, etc., are on the minds of LAN managers these days. We are getting a growing number of phone calls from LAN managers inquiring, can the sniffer be used to help secure their network? And the answer is yes. The sniffer alone is not a cure for the common computer virus. However, the sniffer utilized with other good management techniques can help greatly in solving security issues on a network. One of the items that we supply you with here at Network General that helps address this issue on security is this one called the Sniffer Threat, which is a reprint from LAN Magazine and is written by Mike Hurwitz, one of their editors, and basically talks about how the LAN Protocol Analyzer can be a network security risk. On the other hand, he concludes the bad guys are going to use protocol analyzers, maybe the good guys better too. This reprint can be very helpful to those managers who are concerned about security. Another key issue, of course, is just keeping the network up and running. Because when the network goes down, what does it cost that company? How many tens of thousands of dollars per hour will it cost that LAN manager? How will that impact the phone calls that he's going to get from his management saying, I cannot get on my network, why not, what's going on, let's fix it. One of the things I think you can do when going in and meeting the LAN manager for the first time is plant some seeds of doubt. And you do that simply by asking questions which he has to supply the answers to. So you always start out saying, what are you using for LAN diagnostics today? And if he says nothing, you're saying, how do you know what's going on your network? How do you know, etc., etc., etc. Plant those seeds of doubt. Now, clearly, during the demonstration itself, you need to address issues with the LAN manager on subjects that he is concerned about. For example, how does he evaluate his hardware? He is going to need to purchase other gateways, servers, bridges for his network. Different salesmen come in to him and say, we have the best gear, here's the spec sheet, but how does he know how that particular unit will work on his network? Clearly, if he has a sniffer, he can use the sniffer to focus on the performance of that piece of equipment that he is considering buying, and he could find out, is this the best piece of equipment for me? We have had sniffer customers who have used the sniffer in evaluations of hardware tell us that it has paid for itself many times over by saving them a great deal of money in selecting the right type of hardware. Secondly, there may be hardware problems out on the network. Somebody might have a bad transceiver. There may be a number of retransmissions because Station A is sending messages to Station B. Station B is not hearing them because of the poor transceiver, and therefore Station A has to retransmit again and again. Using the sniffer, you can see those retransmissions, and then using logic, you can go and find where the bad hardware is. One of the interesting things that network managers want to know is just what is the pattern of activity on their network. Utilizing, for example, the skyline chart in the capture mode, he can see the different levels as they go up and down over time, so that he can know, gee, why is my network so busy at this time of day when I don't expect it, let's say 9 o'clock in the morning, or why isn't it busy at the end of the day when I'm expecting everybody to upload their files back to the mainframe. Another question, another seed of doubt that you could plant in the LAN manager's mind is the question, how does he plan for the growth of his network? How does he begin to forecast what the network will look like as more and more stations will be added to the network? As we know, networks only grow larger, not smaller. Most people simply keep adding more and more stations to the network without any thought to the consequences. Clearly, the traffic generator can be used as a tool to help that network planning and growth. Now, clearly, we know that the strength of the sniffer is in its protocol decoding and analysis. What we are doing here is enabling the LAN manager to see what is actually going on his network live. We realize, of course, that in spite of a lot of the very positive features that the machine may offer, there still may be some hesitation on the part of the LAN manager in purchasing such a piece of equipment. Clearly, we need to overcome some of those objections in his mind when they are voiced or sometimes not even voiced by him. How can we do so? Number one, I think, is by the use of referral selling. Today, we have over 500 installations of sniffers around the world. That number is growing larger and larger every month. What we need to do is have the potential customers talking to the existing customers and asking them, how do they like the sniffer? I'm glad to say that virtually all of our existing customers love the product. We have some very, very strong endorsers of the product. We have recently sent some surveys out to sniffer users and asked them for their honest comments about the product. I'd like to just take a moment and read some of them to you. To the response of, are you using the sniffer for problems you had expected, or is it fulfilling other roles? This customer answered, quote, we are using it to troubleshoot the net and also to help us plan its expansion as we install additional segments, routers, bridges, etc. When we asked the question, what made you decide to buy the sniffer versus other diagnostic tools available, the response came back, word of mouth recommendations. Another customer answered the following question, did the sniffer fulfill your expectations? And the answer was, the sniffer allowed our company to perform our job and to troubleshoot without a problem and to see, quote unquote, visibly what's happening on our Ethernet. A third customer answered the question, is there one problem where the sniffer has proved itself to be indispensable? If so, please describe. He responded, the sniffer enabled us to prove that certain problems were not caused by the LAN, but rather by the applications. And to the question, what made you decide to buy the sniffer versus other products? The functionality and the ease of use. We've received quite a number of these back, and we're very pleased to say that most of the responses are very positive and very enthusiastic. One letter which we received recently here was from a potential user, and I'd like to describe what he said because I think it's very apropos for most potential customers out there today. And I'm quoting, I manage a large sophisticated LAN using a variety of software and hardware devices to connect remote sites and networks as well as bridges to mainframes. I need the ability to diagnose problems on the LAN from one site. I need a simple way to tell if the network is running optimally. Network management can be a nightmare, particularly when adding new services. There are few resources available to users except to find a sophisticated, good-performing network and pick the brain of its manager. I'm hoping your product will rectify the situation. I'm glad to say that with this customer, the sniffer has rectified the situation. But clearly what we need to have you doing is telling potential sniffer customers to talk with existing sniffer customers about the product, and that's the best endorsement we can have. We regularly mail out to you lists of sniffer customers. We're not just bragging, rather we'd like you to use the fact that DEC in Santa Clara bought a system, and therefore if you have a DEC service office in your area, talk to them and ask them to refer to the people in DEC Santa Clara. As an example, we have sold into virtually every industry in the United States. Banks, insurance companies, educational institutions, computer manufacturers, etc., etc. We have strong references in all of them. We have a database listing names and phone numbers of the actual users. If you would like some of these, call us. We will supply them to you. we think that the referral selling at this point in time will be very, very helpful. Another issue which sometimes comes up from potential customers is, gee, it looks like a nice product, but it's going to cost a lot of money. What should I do? We have several answers for that customer. The first is this booklet, which is a cost-benefit analysis of the sniffer. And in it, it gives several examples of how the sniffer can pay for itself in anywhere from a 1 month to a 1 year time period. We have customers who are references who have said that the sniffer has paid for itself in a week. That's perhaps an exception. A few months is perhaps more the rule. Obviously, what we want to show the customer is not just what the cost of the product is, but what the benefit is and how quickly it can pay for itself. If you need more copies of this, or if you would like a copy of the Lotus program with the spreadsheets on it, please call us and we'll supply that to you. Another issue which sometimes comes up from customers is, I would like to buy the product, but I don't have the capital funds today. What should I do? One option is that the customer can rent. We have an attractive rental program which offers him half of his rental monies back if he purchases the unit within 6 months. 95% of the customers who rent wind up purchasing a sniffer. So we would encourage the customer to rent. The more he uses it, the more he'll like the product. We have other customers who may have difficulties in obtaining the $15,000 or $20,000 for the sniffer. They don't have those types of funds immediately available. What we then recommend is that they lease the sniffer. This is a brochure here from Lease World Corporation, with whom we've been dealing. We hear good things about them from those customers who've dealt with them, and we encourage the potential customer to call Lease World and to purchase or to arrange a lease through Lease World, going out perhaps through 5 years, where then the cost to them would be approximately 2% a month. Thus, if you're talking about a $16,000 sniffer, the cost of them is $300, $325 a month, which could then be spent out of their operating budget if they do not have the funds in a capital budget. One of the items that I have witnessed that has helped to secure the issuance of a PO has been our Land Guru consulting services. Our competitors sell boxes. None of our competitors anywhere in the world offer a Land Guru consulting service. And what we're saying by offering this service is that Network General knows as much about networks and network diagnostics as anywhere in the world, and we will stand behind our customers. Networks are complicated, and sometimes even good network managers utilizing a sniffer may not be able to find a subtle problem. To some degree, this Guru consulting service is like a lifesaver. You buy it, you put it on your boat, you don't expect to use it, but it's nice to have it there in case you need it. In case of emergency, break the glass, call Network General. And so what we're saying is, we're not just going to send you a box with an instruction manual, good luck, Mr. Customer, hope you have no problems, but rather we're telling our customers we're standing behind them, we are confident that they're going to be able to solve their network problems utilizing the sniffer, and in that rare case where they can't, we are going to hold their hand and help them solve their problems. By taking an approach like this, particularly with unsophisticated end users, I believe you will be able to overcome many potential objections and get many more sales as a result. Because let's face it, we're not just selling bytes and bits, we're selling confidence. The confidence that utilizing the sniffer, the network will run well without any difficulties. I'd like to now take a few minutes and review some of the other tools that we have made available to you that you should be utilizing on a regular basis when going out to visit your customers. Number one And on my lap and right next to me, you see some of these signs that we've produced and sent out to each of the sales offices. And that is here, the Sniffer won the award as Land Magazine's Product of the Year. And back here, you can see the sign, the PC Magazine Editor's Choice. I encourage you to take these with you on your sales calls, to merely sit them down next to the Sniffer, because they start raising questions. Oh, when did that happen? Could you tell me a little more about it? And the answer is very simple. In every comparison ever made by an independent magazine or consulting firm, the Sniffer has always won the award as the best land analyzer. And we're very proud of that. And as a matter of fact, I would encourage you, when talking about the Sniffer, to talk about our award-winning Sniffer, because people like to get the best product available. And we want to tell them that the Sniffer is the best product available, and it's not just because I said so, and it's not just because you said so, but rather it's because a lot of independent people who are a lot smarter than both of us have analyzed the Sniffer, have analyzed the competition, and made the determination we're the best. So what the customer is getting for his money is the best product available, our award-winning Sniffer. Another tool, which I would encourage you to take with you on all your sales calls, is our manual. This is something I'm particularly proud of. We put a lot of time and attention at Network General on producing manuals written in English that are clear and understandable. And now, of course, our manuals are bound in a hardcover. They go out, of course, to every purchaser of a Sniffer. But you could bring this along to show to the potential customer, and perhaps even leave it with him for a day or two, so that he could see that Network General produces first quality documentation as well as a first quality product. Because how many of you have ever been in a situation where you've bought a product, particularly a piece of software or a piece of instrumentation, you pick up the instructions, and for all intents and purposes they may as well have been written in Japanese. It is not user-friendly, it is not understandable. It's happened to me a number of times, and it's very frustrating. One of the nice comments we sometimes get from people who use the Sniffer is that they never had to open this manual. But it's nice for them to know that they have it, that it's here, that it is well written, well documented, and is part of the overall quality of the package that we are selling to that customer. Two of the documents that a number of salesmen have used very effectively in selling the Sniffer have been these issues of the Local Netter, a well-respected publication put out by Architecture Technology out of Minneapolis. Subscription rate here is $300 per year. This one here is from June 6th, and this one here is from September 9th. And they do careful analysis and evaluations of the Sniffer and compare it with a number of our competitors out in the marketplace. So please feel free to utilize these. If you need more copies, please contact us here at the factory. We will be glad to supply them to you. Sometimes the question comes up from customers who have not heard about the Sniffer, gee, who is Network General Corporation? Because the Sniffer name is becoming very popular. It's very difficult to forget it, but Network General isn't. We do have copies, of course, of our corporate backgrounder, which we'll be glad to send to you or to any customer. We do have many strong references. I think you could learn a lot about a company by its customers. And again, looking at our customer list here, as we begin to get the camera where it should be, looking at, customers, the IBMs, the DECs, the Amdals, the Apples, et cetera, we have been fortunate enough to be able to sell into the who's who, not only in the computer industry, in the financial industry, in the insurance industry, in the manufacturing industry. We've sold into many of the leaders in the Fortune 500. And I think that says an awful lot about the confidence that these people have in us and our products. We have basically become, in 2 short years, the industry leaders. Data General has licensed the Sniffer from us Interland is licensing the sniffer from us. SciTech has a resell licensing agreement with us. A number of people are realizing that the sniffer has become the industry standard. And when talking with customers, you could present our array of products as a three-dimensional sniffer family. In one direction, you have the 6 different topologies that we support: Ethernet, 4 megabit token ring, 16 megabit token ring, ArcNet, StarLAN, and the IBM PC LAN. That's one direction on an axis. And the second direction are the 10 different protocol suites which we offer, which recognize and interpret over 130 different protocols. Nobody comes even close to touching us when it comes to protocol interpretation. The third axis, which you can describe, are the 3 different platforms: the 286 portable, the 386 portable, and the 286 laptop. And so what we are doing is not just offering a product to the customer, but rather a family of products from which the customer will choose the system, the hardware, and the software that is optimized to meet his needs. What we have been doing more of here at Network General since the sales meetings is focusing on the issue of training. I would like to encourage you to spend more and more time yourself focusing on these training videotapes. We have had reps use them selectively for helping to train some of their customers at their sites. We are also busy signing up more people who are involved in training institutes to utilize the sniffer in their training courses. In front of me here is a brochure from the Data Tech Institute. A number of you have attended this course on troubleshooting a local area network. We've received some very high recommendations about the course, and many of the people who have attended the course have subsequently gone out and bought the sniffer. They didn't have to be sold on the product. All they had to do was attend the course and see how the product was utilized. I would encourage you to attend these local courses. I would encourage you to urge your customers and potential customers to attend these local courses as well. One key issue for you to stress to your customers, potential customers, is we don't leave anybody in the lurch. We have never abandoned any customer. We make our newest technology available to our customers at a reasonable price through our update programs, our upgrade programs, and our exchange programs, as we've recently done with the introduction of our 500 series of machines. We want the customer to be our customer not only up front, but over many, many years, so that we could do business together profitably for a long time to come. I think, ladies and gentlemen, that you have now heard the gist of what I think are some cogent selling points for you to be emphasizing to your customers. We're taking a full service and support approach. We have the best product in the business. We're growing the amount of options and networks that we are available to address. We're very bullish here at Network General. We think 1989 is going to be a hell of a year. If I believe your forecasts and even diminish them and dilute them, it's going to be a great year. We look forward to continuing to work with you. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of work, but boy, it's beginning to pay off. And I think that we're going to both grow together in the upcoming months. We're going to finish with this segment of our taping right now. What will follow later on will be a demonstration of how to properly give a sniffer demo to a customer. I thank you. I encourage and welcome your comments and feedback on this and our other videotapes. And signing off from our WSNIFF studios here, Morey Schapira saying, good selling. Hi, I'm back again. I'm Morey Schapira, and this is the second half of our demonstration tape. The first half focused on some of the sales techniques to use in demonstrating the sniffer and talking to potential customers. The second half will focus on the mechanics of giving a good demonstration. There are a number of points I think that I'd like to highlight before the actual demonstration takes place. Most of these focus around making sure all your ducks are in line before you give the actual demonstration. Number one, checking the day before, making sure that all the right decision makers are there. You don't want to go and demonstrate to an engineer and a week later have to come back and demonstrate to the engineering manager, and a week after that come back and demonstrate to the engineering vice president. If possible, have the decision maker present during the demonstration. Number two, make sure that you have the right sniffer for the right network. Don't go out with your Ethernet sniffer if you're going to need to go live on an ArcNet network. Number three, if you're going out on Ethernet, find out if it's thick net or thin net in advance so that you can throw the switch inside on the communications card in order to be ready to use it, or bring along your own transceiver. Number four, I would like to emphasize, use a color monitor if at all possible. In front of us here, we have a Sony monitor that we use routinely here in the factory, and we have it plugged into the sniffer. And as you can see, it looks very colorful. It looks very sharp. The software engineers here at Network General have done a very nice job of putting together a very colorful, clear menu and graphics which are very easy on the eye. Now, one of the secrets to success, we believe, in having a successful demonstration is not allowing your enthusiasm about the product to let you become a hog on the sniffer. In other words, don't get so excited in demonstrating that you're always on the machine while your customer is sitting back there passively in the corner with his arms folded. What you want to do as soon as possible is get the customer on the sniffer himself. Now he may say, gee, I don't know how to use this. There's your cue. Obviously, you will show him how without any previous instruction, in 15 to 30 minutes, he can know how to use the sniffer and gain benefit from it. The first thing you'd like to highlight is the structure of our menu, and that's our middle column here. And you can see that the topic of focus is highlighted in red, capture, and defined in the area below. So capture means begin data collection from the network. So all we do is hit F10. Now, one of the things that I would encourage you to do is to think out loud. In other words, when you say hit F10, verbalize it, not just hit the key, because we want to demonstrate that the customer merely needs to watch the screen for the 10 function keys in order to operate the sniffer. Now I'd like us to turn our attention to the upper left-hand corner of the screen. And already we can see the first example of the sniffer's decoding ability by going into the Ethernet addresses and defining and interpreting for us the manufacturer of the communications cards used on that Ethernet network. So, for example, instead of merely showing a 12-digit hex address, which consists of 6 bytes, we have a lookup table embedded in the sniffer which will interpret who the manufacturer of that particular Ethernet communications card is. For example, this one is DEC, 3Com, Interlan, Bridge, Kinetics, etc., etc. What we have learned from this capture is that the DEC 487 machine sent 81 frames to the Interlan 7CO machine. I'm just reading the last 3 digits here for brevity, and which in turn sent 98 frames back. In addition, looking down here at towards the bottom of the screen, we can see that 300 frames total were sent, 300 were accepted. There were 0 fragments, 0 misalignments, 0 bad CRCs, no frames were lost, and that only 3% of the RAM buffer where the packets are captured was utilized. In all, 93 kilobytes were accepted. Now, if you want to show this in different ways, the sniffer offers you many different capture options. And all we have to do is hit F6, as I'm doing, And for example, instead of showing frame counts on the top as we did, we can show percent of network utilization. Or here, if the network were busier, we could show a linear scale as opposed to a log bar scale. And here, instead of showing pair counts, we could show individual counts. So let me run this trace one more time. I merely hit F10, and you can see this trace running again and again. Notice on the bottom, we see that we are using about 1.5 to 2% of the network. We leave a high water mark, and we see the individual users who are transmitting data, but we do not see to whom they are transmitting the data. Again, going back and showing it in one more mode, we hit F6 for capture options, and we change from pairs to skylines. And here what I'll do is show you a little trick. When going back to hit F10, instead of hitting F10 only, we hit the Shift key and F10, and the trace will repeat itself again and again and not just run out at the end of 17 seconds as it just did. Here we see the skylines representing how many kilobytes of data we're going by on the top, and what I will do is hit scale up, F5, just to enlarge it a bit, and I will tab down here and hit F5 again. And now we can see the pattern of the activity level on the network. You can see we are integrating once a second. These are 15-second windows. We have the option, as you saw before, to integrate once a second, or once a minute, or once an hour. Thus, for example, a network manager could leave this on overnight, come in the morning, and see what the level of activity was on his network overnight. Note as well, up in the right-hand corner, we show you how long you have been capturing for. Clearly, when looking at this screen, we are seeing things in what I will describe as a macro representation, as opposed to when we went back in using the two-station mode. I will hit pause, and then hit F6, and go back to pair counts, two stations, and now resume, F9. Now we see things back in the other mode. In order to stop the capture, all we do is hit F10. Now we've completed the first step in the process, capturing the data. What actually happens is that the bits come down the Ethernet, they are replicated in the sniffer, they are replicated and stored in a fast RAM buffer, and now that they are stored in this buffer, we have the opportunity to go in and examine them and gain useful information about our network from them. Obviously, by looking again at our screen, we see we currently have three options. We can either do a new capture by hitting F10. We can go and hit F1 to the help menu, and let me do that at this point. I hit F1, and behold, a help menu comes up, and this is an index, similar to the index in the manual. And so if, for example, I wanted to know how to play back capture files, I just hit enter. Here it is. I read it till I finish. I escape. Here's my main help menu, and I escape again. Please note that I can use the access to the help menu at any point from anywhere on the sniffer. This makes it easy for somebody to utilize just in case they need the manual but have misplaced it. The last option in front of us right now is F3, the data display, which is exactly what we want to do now. I hit F3, it's filtering, it's working, it's now done. And behold, this is the summary window. What the summary window is telling us in this default position is the following. The first frame captured the DEC 487 machine was talking to the Interland 7CO machine. The highest level protocol was NFS, a SUN protocol. There was a command. The command was to look up host info at a particular location. I scrolled to the right because the screen isn't quite large enough at that location. A response comes back as I move my highlighter down to F2, to frame 2. 7CO responds back to 487, 39 thousandths of a second later. NFS protocol, an application level protocol. The response is no such file. Already, you now have a topic of discussion with your LAN manager. Why don't you know where your file is? I've seen this happen on many networks, and let me assure you, many LAN managers begin to ask questions of their applications programmers. How come our computer doesn't know where to look for its files? Why is it running around like that? Already, the sniffer is beginning to show some inefficiencies in the network utilization. Now, one of the beauties of the sniffer is that we allow you to see the information that you want to see in many different ways. We will hit F6 for our options, and we will move over, for example, down and turn on the following functions. Absolute time, an X is off, a check is on, so it's off, we turn it on. We will then go down a little further and turn on relative time. Now we'd like to display our data and see what new information we have gained. I hit F3 and behold, we timestamp every frame that goes by. Here's the actual time that the event happened. Clearly this can be very helpful because if an event occurred out on the network, the network manager can now correlate that event with that happened with the clock on his main computer. The delta T is the difference between these absolute times. The relative times over here are the sums of the times. Now this can give us some very useful information. So for example, if we go to the next line and we see the DEC 487 is asking the Interland 27CO, there is no such file, create this host file at this location, F equals 0519. How long did it take for that command to be responded to? What we do here is we look at our 10 function keys and we go to F2, set mark. And I hit F2 and behold, this is now my 0 point. Any events which occurred before it have a negative relative time, anything after it a positive time. So I simply scroll down until I see 27CO responding to 487. Oh, slip of the finger here, my friends. I scroll down a few frames and behold, here's 27CO responding to 487 saying, okay, I have created this file at this location, and it took 0.1881 seconds for a response. The question is that a fast response time or is that a slow response time? I can't answer that. That's a function of the equipment that's being used. Is it a mainframe? Is it a mini? Is it a PC? What are the performance parameter baselines that this network manager has set up for his system? He has to set them up. What the sniffer does is allow him to actually see those levels of performance. Now, let's go back into F6, hit Display Options, move over. We will turn off absolute time. We will turn off relative time. And let's turn on two other functions. Let's turn on bytes, as we see, simply by depressing the space bar. Again, thinking out loud as I'm demonstrating this, just as I would hope you would do when demonstrating to your customer, or instructing him what to do while he's on the machine. And turning on network utilization. And as you see in the explanation, show the network utilization in the vicinity of each frame, computed as a percent of the 10 megabit per second bandwidth The default position is over 100 millisecond window. It's up to the customer to decide over how much of a window he would like to see. Again, all we do is go into data display by hitting F3. Now, what we see is as follows. We see the delta time, which is the same as before, but now we see the size of each packet. How many bytes are in each packet? We know that the Ethernet legal minimum is 60, and we see a number of 60-byte packets. And we also know that the Ethernet legal maximum is 1514. And here we see a couple of those packets as well. One interesting point, if one looks at a lot of Ethernet networks, one sees a bimodal distribution. In other words, a lot of packets with very short frames, a lot of packets with very long frames, and the long ones are usually ones that are sending lots of data. So for example, down here in frame 13, we are seeing a write command to write 4096 bytes. Obviously that cannot fit in one packet. It can't even fit in two packets. The second packet is a continuation frame of 13, and 15 is a continuation of 14 until there are enough packets sent to send all of the data. The next column can be very helpful as well from the aspect of network planning, network management. We see what percent of the network is utilized by that machine sending that message. Here we see it was only 3.68%. If you go on a busy network with a large file server, for example, from Sun Microsystems, you might see as much as 20-25% of the network being utilized when it sends its messages. The implications there are very clear. Should you have more than 2 or 3 of these machines on the same network operating at the same time, you may be running out of network bandwidth. And that's something to think about in your network planning. Next, I'd like to go back to our display options, hit F6, and what I suggest we do from here is go down 2 spaces and turn on hex. And when looking at hex, we can also have the choice of showing things in ASCII, or for those who remember it, in EPSIDEC, for those who came from the Big Blue School of Computing. We hit F3 to show our information, and we have what is the classic data scope in front of us. In other words, here is a particular frame. Here it is broken out in the actual hex. Now you will note the different colors. What we have done is apply different colors to the different levels in the 7-layer ISO layers. Now, this frame contains 1,326 bytes. I hit my tab key to take me into this window. I hit F4. I can zoom in, and we can see that this is indeed a very long frame with a lot of data. I keep scrolling till we come to the end of that frame. I hit home. We're back at the top of the frame. I hit F4. We zoom out of the frame. Here you see the data. Here you see the translation of that data into ASCII. Now, this is what the old data scopes would do. Show you each packet and the contents of each packet. Now, how many people in the audience know what this byte means at this location? Please raise your hands. Don't all jump up at once. This byte 4-5 at that particular location. You don't know? Well, I don't know either. Who knows? The sniffer knows. Now we will demonstrate the real value and beauty of the product. The protocols specify what every byte and bit means in each different location. There are encyclopedias for each different protocol which describe all of this. In the old days, software engineers used to spend days literally putting together but a few lines of hex until the sniffer came along. I merely go back, I hit F6 one more time, and we go into the third and the key window for the sniffer, the detail window, show the detailed interpretation of the frames. Interpretation is the key word, because we're going to take that esoteric hex and turn it into something meaningful. Take detail window, depress the space bar, turn it on, and hit F3. And what we see in this window is the detail of what really goes on. Now, I will tab from the top window down into the detail window, and what I will do is hit Home to put me at the beginning of the header. Now we will go according to the Ethernet laws, the Ethernet protocols, bit by bit, byte by byte, and understand what that means. So for example, the first 6 bytes in hex are the destination. The next line, the next 6 bytes are the source. And here you again see the translation of the manufacturer of the board, in this case Interland. The next 2 bytes, the Ethernet ether type 0800, and for those of you who don't recognize what that is, the sniffer tells you it's IP. This is all in the DLC, the data link control layer, to which we've given this color of magenta. And moving down, we now go to the next layer in that particular frame, which is IP, which has a green color. And moving down into the IP header, we see that this byte means version 4, header length of 20 bytes, the type of service 00, and we just keep going down line by line. Note, here you have 8 spaces, 3 zeros, and 5 dots. Those are bit protocols, 8 bits in a byte, and each bit indicates something different. Whether it be a 1 or a 0 indicates something different. And here you can see that this particular sequence of zeros means routine, normal delay, normal throughput, normal reliability, the total length, etc., etc. Time to live, how long that message will be allowed to be circulated on that network, FF 255, 255 seconds, until it would vaporize. Here's your protocol, your checksum, C3AA. It is correct. If it is not correct, the sniffer would tell you so. Inside the IP is also the IP source address, 36.53.0.10. Remember, this could be a message which was sent from another network over a router or a gateway to your network, and you want to know what its original source was. This is it. Anybody who's using TCP/IP knows what that means. There are tables of this, and what the destination was. Moving through the IP into the UDP, we see things such as the source port, the header, the length, then the RPC layer, and finally, at the very end, the Sun NFS layer, with all of the details of the NFS. What you have seen the sniffer do is decode through all 7 layers, from the lowest layer, the DLC, up through the application layer. Some of our competitors do some decoding, but number 1, they don't go through all 7 layers. Number 2, they do not give you color-coded protocols. Number 3, they do not have synchronization between the different screens. So for example, as I move from frame 16 to frame 17, simultaneously the sniffer is showing you the hex and interpreting it. And you can see in each frame we show you, in the detail window and in the hex window, we show you your point of reference, frame 27 out of the 1,755 that we have captured. Sometimes it'd be of interest to the network manager to compare 2 frames side by side. We give him that ability. Going back to our display options, F6, I depress F6, I go down to 2 viewports, I turn it on, I hit F3, and behold, you can see all 6 windows. We can compare here, for example, frame 27 with frame 1, and we can go into the hex and do direct comparisons. And as a matter of fact, you can see a number of things that could be similar, as well as some things that are different in those two respective frames. We allow you the ability to tab around from window to window. We can zoom in and move around in each window. You can see the protocol layers, literally layered one on top of the other. And we also have the ability to tab around all 6 of those windows. I will go back into F6, turn that off, just for clarity here, and go back to our regular display, F3. By this point in time, the customer should begin to feel more comfortable that all he has to do is not read a complicated manual, but merely follow along the 10 soft keys here in order to utilize the sniffer properly. Now, clearly there's a great deal of information out here. We've captured 1,755 frames. What we have done is basically create a database discriminator inside of the sniffer that allows us to display virtually anything we'd like to see. So we go down to filters. I hit F. All I need to do is hit the first letter, and we can filter based on any of a number of important selection criteria. For example, suppose I wish to filter on an address level. DLC is on. I will turn it off. I will turn on IP. Now I'll hit F3. And you can see up here in the top that the physical level addresses, which were here before, have been replaced by the IP addresses. Note also that, for example, in frame 31, there is not an end bracket as there is at the beginning. So what we do is we hit F6. It means that the address is too big for the size of our window. We move over one. We see that the name width is 12 spaces. We hit Enter. I will press 15. Enter. Now we will hit F3 and display again. And now we can see why that didn't fit, because it was 36.56.0.208. For people who are running networks which are interconnected, the ability to see these higher level addresses, whether it's an IP address on an IP network, a DRP address on a DRP network, is a very important function which the sniffer can utilize. At this point also, we have the ability to go in and give meaningful names if we know the locations of those addresses. I hit F6. I hit the letter M for our Manage Names capability. We go over to Edit Names. We hit Enter. And we see here the addresses of everybody that has come by on this network, including both their DLC addresses, the physical location, and the IP addresses, which are the sources of origination on another network. So for example, we go in here for this address. If we know that this is Charlie's station, we type in Charlie, and we see Charlie appear on the screen. Doing this again, if this is Joe's, we type in Joe. And if this is Sam here, we can type in Sam. And these names will appear when we go back to our display screen. Now, for example, we can give a different address name on a DLC level and an IP level. So, for example, if this particular IP address refers to the fact that it originated in Ohio, oops, it's down there. As you can see, there's Ohio. And we can go back up to one or two more. And if this address originated at MIT, we can go up here as well. And now I'll hit, let's say just one more. And this is this one originated Let's hear it for the folks over in Rhode Island. And now all I do is hit escape, just as the screen instructs me, and now I display my data. Obviously, anywhere where I had a name on a physical address, on an IP address, the substitution has been made. And if I zoom in, we can see those places where I've made that substitution, the communication going back and forth. If I go back to F6 and go to my filters, go to my address level, turn on DLC as well as IP, and hit F3. Oops, I need to turn IP off. My mistake. F6, filters, address level, turn off IP. Now we will see just the physical addresses. Behold, we see who is talking to whom. Sam is talking to Charlie, and you can see that communication go back and forth. We have many other ways we can display this information. For example, if we want to filter just between two individuals, we may filter on a station address. We can give them options of filtering on 4 different pairs. So, as an example, we could say we want to filter from, we saw Sam and Charlie. So here's Sam, from Sam to, hit enter. C for Charlie, enter. We can do one direction or both. In this case, for purposes of discussion, we'll do both. Now we will display it by hitting F3. And guess what we found out? There's no communication between those two individuals. Okay? Let's go back. Hit F. We will go back in our display and try a different filter from, well, for example, Sam to anyone. And we will display it by hitting F3. And if we look in our zoom in our window, we can see all of the communications that Sam is sending both to and from. If we hit F6 and go back in, here's our filters, here's our station address, and we say just in one direction, turn it off. Now we can go back and we see all the communication that Sam is sending out. It doesn't take too long to see what the pattern is, that Sam is talking to this 3COM 841 machine. Now, again, continuing to show the options capabilities, the flexibility inherent in the sniffer, we hit F6, go back to filters. We will turn off this particular filter just by entering any station again. And they have the options, of course, to turn on reverse direction. We could include or exclude things. We will go back. At this point, I'd like to go back and look at our summary window by hitting F3, data display, and noting that there is a lot of NFS traffic. NFS being application layer, and that's where the activity is really taking place. It is giving us a lot of useful information of what is actually happening, looking up files, searching for files, creating files, etc., etc. Now I'd like to show a demonstration, for example, of how to look just for NFS frames alone. So we will go into our data options by hitting F6. We will hit F for filters and go over and look at a protocol, NFS. I hit the letter N and it takes me to NetWare. I hit it again and I'm on NFS. Here I will take the NFS and turn it off, to press the space bar along with Alt, and I do the complement. So now, if I hit Data Display, I will filter just on those frames which have the NFS protocol in them. I hit F3, and there we have it. I hit F4 to zoom in, and you can see all of these frames are NFS frames. The C is command, response, command, response, command, response, etc., etc. And just even by looking at the flow of communication, you can get a pretty good idea of what is going on. So for example, if I go down to this frame, it says look up get key at this location, no such file. The command comes out again, look up get key at that location, no such file. Look up get key at that location, no such file. Clearly a very inefficient network that it's looking again and again and again for a particular file which simply is not located there. Now, we note by looking at our screen that virtually all of the communication going on is going on between two individuals, Charlie and the DEC 487 machine. Well, if we'd really like to see that enhanced, we have an option which nobody else in the industry offers under Display Options, F6, called Two-Station Format. We go from our summary, over one, down one. We can press the spacebar to turn on Two-Station Format, and then we hit F3 again to display it. And thus you can see all the communication is going from Charlie here to the DEC machine, Charlie, the DEC machine, Charlie, the DEC machine. You see it's offset in order to really follow the flow back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And you can see that the DEC machine is asking, look up this information, and it's continually coming back, no such file, no such file, no such file. Now, if we go down to the next line over here, we can see is read a directory. Why is he reading that directory? Well, after trying to guess where a particular file is located, he's going to do it the old-fashioned way. Let's read that directory. So the DEC 487 sends out the command to read it. One frame later, the response comes back from Charlie. Okay, let's see what Charlie has actually sent him back. We will hit F4. We will zoom out. We will tab down into the hex window. We will hit F4 and zoom in. And if we go down this file, we could actually begin to see what's in the directory here in the ASCII window. The names of all the different files in that particular directory. This is a pretty big frame, so we keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling till we come to the end. Now, is there a better way of doing it? Certainly. By hitting F4, we zoom out, and we tab up into the detail window, and we zoom in. And as you can see, on the NFS level, the application layer, we can now begin to see the names of the different files in this directory. We've now just demonstrated some of the useful filtering techniques which you can use with the sniffer on your network. Now I'd like to show how some of those filtering techniques can actually be utilized during the capture process. Now we have set some filters on here. We can go in and unset them and try to remember which ones are on or which ones are off, or we could take an easy way by using a default capability here. I'd like to just go back to the main menu, hitting F5 to get to the main menu, and going into the files, hitting F, going to load a particular setup, load setups from a disk file. We hit enter, we see a default position, we hit enter again, it's reading, and what Sniffer is now currently doing is adjusting all of the setups back into the default position. Now, looking back at the sniffer, we can hit the letter C, which takes us to the cable tester at the top, and the capture filters. We can go into the capture filters here, and you see a similar set of capabilities as we had in the display filters. In the real world, when you go on a customer's network, particularly a busy Ethernet network, what sometimes is a useful technique is to go down to good frames here and to turn it off. Now, before we witnessed the capture of that TCP IP trace, we saw there were 0 bad frames. Obviously, we'd like to show what some of these bad frames might look like. Fortunately, we've loaded a bad file, real bad, into the sniffer. We hit F, go into, hit C, go into capture from, instead of TCP IP, we will go into a CYP file. And now that that's been done, we will do a new capture just looking at the bad frames. Now this is going to take a while. So what we are going to do to speed up the process is we will hit the Alt key and accelerate the flow of the file. And what we see was that there were 130 frames which came by. None of them were good. 126 of them were fragments, which is why you see question mark, question mark, question mark. 4 of them were misaligned. What this frame represents was a customer leaving the sniffer on his, what this capture represents was the customer leaving the sniffer on his network overnight and filtering just the bad frames. If we examine, as you can see, there are some question marks here which indicate a collision has taken place, and there's not even enough of a Ethernet identification to make any type of identification. Let's look at the summary window to see what meaningful data we can take out from this by hitting F3. We can look here and we can page down. We notice some interesting things. First of all, here we begin to see, towards the middle of this page, that how long between these bad events happening. We see frames here which are either 20 bytes or 19 bytes, which are illegal frames because your Ethernet minimum is 60. Notice that they're coming approximately 20 seconds here, 20 seconds, 20, 20. Something is going on here. Also, take a note here. Here's your destination, a legitimate address. This is not a legitimate address. Look at the pattern. FE, FD, FC, FB, FA, F9, etc., etc. Somebody's doing something very squirrely on this network. I don't know if it's an illegal user. I don't know if it's a defective instrument, but somebody's counting down 254, 253, 252, etc., etc. Something to me looks very squirrely. First of all, the packets are too short. Second of all, we're seeing some irregularities here. But notice we keep going down, that now instead of just getting these 20-byte frames, we're getting even shorter frames. These are misaligned frames. This, when you are frames that are only 2 to 5 bytes, those are legitimate collisions on an Ethernet. Now, look at, for example, how long between these collisions, 7,500 seconds, 5,400 seconds, and you begin to wonder, gee, what is that really telling me? It's very difficult to ascertain, but one thing we might do is as follows. Go to F6, turn on absolute time as well, and take a look. And what we could see is that these types of collisions began to happen at around 6:30 in the morning. That they were getting the funny things happening in the middle of the night around 4 a.m. Note, 4:16, 4:23, 4:30. He's getting these funny ones. And then sometime it's after 6:30, which is perhaps when the first shift comes in. When the first shift comes in, you can begin to notice a number of collisions occurring. Let me go back and just again point out at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, these collisions are occurring. There's other useful information. For example, we could see legitimate message being sent from a deck E04 to a deck 404 3 times, but note these 3 packets contain less than the legal Ethernet minimum of 60 bytes. So as you can see, the LAN manager has a place to begin looking for problems on the network. You could start with these 2, for example. What I've tried to highlight here by utilizing this collection of bad frames is some of the useful capabilities that the sniffer has. Bad frames are one thing, but the fine-tuning that was demonstrated before utilizing the different filtering capabilities can be just as important to the smooth running of a network. Now at this point, we'll go back to our main menu, hit F5. Suppose that trace had just been captured and now I wanted to save it to be able to show it to my manager. I would have several ways of doing it. First, I could go into Display, hit the letter P, and go into the Print menu. At the back of the sniffer, we have a parallel and serial port. We can take that information, print it out on a standard printer. We can adjust the page size, the number of lines per page. We can, if we wish, print titles on each page. Or, if we don't want to print it out on a printer, but would rather save it on the hard disk, in this particular model, PA302, has a 40 meg disk, we can save the data. We can save some of it from frame 1 or all of it all the way down to frame 41. Now all we have to do is hit enter. We can give it a name. We can call this video. I hit enter. It's been replicated, all 130 frames, and it's there for me to go back and pull up at any time I want for demonstration purposes. If we are now done with our capture, all we have to do is hit exit, hit E, we exit. We are prompted again, do we wish to save those names? We can save them to a hard disk so they will reappear automatically the next time we need the sniffer. Since we don't, we hit enter to proceed. And one last but very, very important thing must be done before shutting down the sniffer and taking it back. And that is going over here to system shutdown and hitting it. And now at this point we can go and turn off our power. By doing that, we are ensuring that the hard disk gets locked into place. If that's not done, there is a possibility that in moving the sniffer, the hard disk may be damaged. As rugged a system as this Toshiba is, and it is a very rugged system, it has an excellent mean time between failure. If we don't properly lock the heads, there is a chance of damage taking place. We need to emphasize that point. Thus, we have demonstrated a lot of the key features and capabilities of the sniffer. We were not on the live network. We used the files. We hope that you will go into the files that are on the sniffer, get comfortable with several of them, so that whenever you cannot possibly go on the customer's live network, you can use those files to your advantage, because you will know them by heart. You will know some of the highlights to point out there. Practice makes perfect with the sniffer, as with everything else. The better you can demonstrate this, the more adept you will be at getting sniffer sales. Clearly at this point, you would want to follow up with the customer and, answer his specific questions, understand where he stands in terms of his decision-making process, find out, for example, if he might need to use your machine for a day, get used to it. If you can afford to leave it with him, don't disrupt any other potential demonstrations by doing so. And then follow up with a written quote with the model number for his network, with the protocols that he would need. Leave that quote with him or send it to him in the mail the next day so he has it in front of him. That's very helpful in his decision-making process, so he can take that quote to his manager with a purchase requisition and say, we've had this machine demonstrated to us, it's the best in the business, we've seen it live, we have the literature, we have the endorsements of other customers, we want this machine, we need it to do our jobs better. I thank you for your time. I hope this tape has proved very useful. Study it. If you have any questions, please feel free to call here at the factory, either myself or anyone in technical support. If you're on the East Coast, always feel free to call Don DeBritta in New York. And otherwise, good selling. Go out and let's have a few more record months. Thank you. Have a nice day.